A very warm welcome to our audiences. We are very glad today to have with us today the very famous and very experienced and an expert who is going to tell you what it takes to be a CEO, how to keep your CEO job, and a lot of other questions surrounding that top job which every MBA and management student aspires for. Please welcome Mr. Waldemar Schmidt. He is a global businessman with considerable CEO and chairman experience. His main focus is strategy, structure, and people. He has worked with various organizations in his long career and has worked at several positions nationally and internationally. He has held executive positions in Italy, Brazil, Denmark, UK, etc. He has been at non-executive positions with a lot of companies, a lot of Danish companies, and been a board of member with several Danish companies. And finally, he has also led a, a top-tier career with various international companies. He has won many awards, including the Order of Knight of Denbrough First Degree by the Queen of Denmark. It is a sheer pleasure to have him with us today, and let's hope that we get to learn a lot from Mr. Waldemar. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Shall we start with the first question?
Yes, please do.
How has been your journey as a global head and CEO to many companies and organizations?
My first CEO job was one I got when I was 29 years old. I had some pre-CEO experience, and that was in Italy, and I joined an international company, and they sent me to Brazil to become a CEO of a newly established company. And from there on, I had a number of different and bigger CEO jobs. So my interest in the issue of CEO is based on my own experience, that somebody trusted me and made me a CEO when I was very young. I myself have made a lot of people CEOs for the first time. I have been teaching the subject of leadership at various business schools in Europe, and this has led to the book that I've written called From MBA to CEO, where I've tried to put some of my experiences so that they can become available to a greater audience. I don't hear you now.
We look forward to learn a lot from you. You say that you yourself has seen a lot of people come to the position of CA. What does it take to become a CA? Do I need to be a mid-year-old to be eligible for a CEO post? Or do I need an MBA from a top college to be a CEO?
There's no simple formula to that, but one view that I hold, and this is based on my experience, is that I do not believe that you are born to become a CEO. That does not mean that everybody can become a CEO, but given the opportunity, then many people can show what they do, what they can do, and they can become CEOs. So you really need to place yourself in a position where you are seen as a candidate. And one of the prerequisites for that is that you know the business that you are talking about. You know the numbers, so you have to work in finance. You have to know your customers, so you have to work in sales and marketing. And you have to know your product, so you need to work in operations or supply chain or whatever deals with your product. And then you have to demonstrate that you can work with people, because you need to show leadership. You cannot become a CEO without being a great leader. Do you need an MBA? I would say that in the very early years after you graduate as an MBA, you are ahead of your competition, and you have to use it while it's fresh, because 10, 20 years down the road, it will count less. It will always count, but it really counts in the early days.
That's great to know, sir. Now, what do CEOs do?
The CEO job also, as I describe in my book, comes in many different sizes. It goes from being a CEO of your own company where you are in charge of everything because you only yourself. And then it goes all the way to a very large company where you're also in charge of everything: strategy, dealing with investors, the organization, everything. But then there are many companies in between where you're not in charge of everything. So it really varies about what kind of CEO job you have. But basically, CEOs are in charge of strategy, which means that if you are a big CEO, you are in charge of formulating the strategy with your team. If you are a smaller CEO, somebody has developed the strategy, perhaps you've been part of that. So you have to find out what is your role in terms of in terms of implementing the strategy. So strategy is important at various levels, but your role varies with the size of the company. Then you are, of course, in charge of execution. If you are the big CEO, you have to make sure that your team around you understand what it is, and execution is perfect. If you are in a smaller CEO job, you are very much involved in the action and the execution. So execution is very important. The third part of that should occupy CEO is about people. So it's building teams around you, because it's very limited what one-man teams can do. So having great people around you, developing them, letting them get on with the job is very, very important. How do you spend your day as a CEO? Again, it varies with the job. For my own example was when I first started, I did virtually everything myself. The company was being built up from scratch. So I had to do my own budgets, my own P&L, my own cash flow, my own balance sheet, go and see customers, train the people in the factory, and doing basically everything to start with. In my last job as CEO of a company which at that time employed 250,000 people in more than 40 countries, the job, of course, was totally different. It was a public company with shareholders around the world. So I had to visit shareholders. As I said, we had operations in 40 countries. Our head office employed less than 50 people. Very interestingly, people in the head office, they said, "You travel too much." And people in operations and the investors say, "We see you too little." So you have to find the balance of how you spend your time. Definitely, you should not be sitting behind your desk and try to micromanage everything. You have to be out there and play the role that I see is the most important and the best role a CEO can play. It's like a playing coach. So you're with the team, you play with the team. You do not stand on the sidelines and scream and give orders. So you are there to make the team successful. I cannot hear you now.
Yes, sorry, sir. So it depends on the size of the company. Your roles vary accordingly. And yes, the balance is very important, as you mentioned. Now, this question is on the top of mind of most of the MBAs. How do I get my first CEO job?
The all important is to try to lay out a career plan, and that, in my experience, has to include a number of important things. One is you have to set a goal, of course, where you want to go. And there are probably many different ways you can get there, and you have to be flexible on the way, but you have to set yourself a goal. And then the jobs you have before you're ready for a CEO position are really important in terms of which company you work for, which industry you are in, and the various jobs you perform. So you should ideally try to join a company where you have the possibility of working in different functions. As already mentioned, CEOs must know their business, so they must know the product. So you have to be involved somehow in the service operations or in manufacturing or whatever it is. You have to know your customers, so you have to have a job also that involves facing the customer. And then finally, you need to know your numbers. So if you are trained as an accountant, you probably don't need to spend so much time in accountancy. you need to spend more time in manufacturing or operations and in marketing. If you're an engineer, you probably need to spend quite a lot of time in financing and also maybe in customer-facing activities. So depending on that, you have to build the total picture of the business and try to join the right company. And I think when you're in your mid-30s, you should have done all of that. It depends on the country you come from. In some countries, people finish their education quite late, in the late 20s. So maybe they're in the late 30s when they're ready for the first CEO job. And then, of course, while you are having these jobs, before you feel that you're ready to become a CEO, it is very important that you have demonstrated that you deliver results, achievements, and that you are a leader, that you can build teams. Then somebody will discover you and give you the opportunity.
That's great, sir. There are a lot of pointers that our students should keep in mind when it comes to numbers, functions, people, and get a total picture of the business.
Yeah.
But sir, when did you get your first CEO job?
That leads to another dimension, which is very important. When you're offered your first CEO job, you should basically never say no, thank you. It doesn't matter how small it is and where it's located, you should take it. My first job was in a place that I had never imagined. I worked in Copenhagen for a Danish company whose production facilities were in Italy, but they were not like in Rome or Milan. It was on an island outside a small village. I took the job. I'd never been there. I took the job because this was an opportunity to go and learn something really exciting. My second job, the big job, was, as I said, in Brazil. I'd never been to Brazil, didn't speak any Portuguese, but I was offered the opportunity to become a real CEO of a startup company. And I took the job because I wanted to be CEO. So if you get the opportunity, don't say no.
That's a great advice, sir. You just have to jump on. Just as Sheryl Sandberg said, when you get a seat to a spaceship, you don't ask which seat it is. You just take the seat.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So moving on to the next question: how do I keep my CEO job?
This is a very, very important question, because I say that getting a CEO job is very difficult, but keeping it is even more difficult. There are so many things that can go wrong, even if you perform well. But the first and foremost, you have to deliver on the expectations. So the first thing you have to do when you get a CEO job is to understand what is expected from you. What are the success criteria? What do people really want you to do, so that you don't have a misunderstanding? This happens all the time, that people don't really understand how bosses look at you in the first instance, and you go one way and that's not the right way. So you have to make absolutely clear between yourself and your boss what the job is all about, what the key criteria are. Is it growth? Is it profitability? Is it whatever it can be? So that's really, really important.
That's great, sir. That's great to know. Now, there's so much of stress surrounding a CEO job that I don't know if it is an assumption or if it is a myth. But still, the question is, how do I balance my work and life?
When you decide to embark on a CEO career path, then you have to also sort of find out whether you are really willing to do what it takes, because it does take a lot, and you have to make choices between work and life balance. And therefore, if you are married, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, I think it's very important that you discuss with him or her what your priorities are. And there will be priorities you will have to make. Some people call it sacrifices. On the other hand, if you get into a job that you really like and you thrive in it, you don't feel the stress really. You enjoy what you are doing. whether you work 80 or 90 hours a week, doesn't really matter as long as the job is exciting. You cannot do that, let's say, the rest of your life, but in the early years, it's really important that you do that. And as I said, there's a price to be paid. You cannot, go to party every Friday evening if you have to work on the Friday evening, and so on and so forth. But this is a matter of choice. So if you want to be CEO, you have to understand that there's a price and you have to make some choices. But if you're good at what you do, you will not be stressed, and you will not see these as sacrifices.
That's great to know, sir. Indeed, a lot of advices and suggestions are pouring out from your work experience, sir. Moving on to the next question, how do I handle my online presence and how do I build my brand as a CEO?
Basically, here we have two questions. One is about the online and the whole technology. I hold the view that technology is here to help us. So technology is our servant. We are not the servants of the technology. So you have to find out how you can use technology to your advantage. And there are so many aspects of it. I'm still caught up from time to time when the family is together. If I have my iPhone under the table during dinner, it's not very well received by the family. So you need to get discipline and when you're on and when you're not on. And as part of that, I think it's important that people who work with you and you have some rules for how you communicate online. And for instance, in terms of email, I have educated people not to send emails to me on CC, which I really don't need to see. The way I train people to do that is that if I get emails that I don't think are important for me, I politely send them back and said, can you please tell me why you think it's important I get this email? And if I do that once or twice, people will understand that maybe they shouldn't do that in the future. So technology is here to help, and we should not be the servants of technology. The second part of your question was about branding. It is very important that you build up a personal brand over time. So it starts with your education. Then the next thing you build on are the pre-CEO jobs. And when you get your first CEO job, you also have the dimension of which industry you are in. And I don't believe that you can jump from industry to industry very easily. The headhunters, they have a term which they call a double switch. This means if you are let's say, head of a division of an IT company, then it's very unlikely that you will have success as CEO in a pharmaceutical company, because you have a double switch. You go up one level and you go to a totally different industry. So there have to be a logic behind the way you move around. And firms, when they recruit, and this is recruitment at all levels, are becoming more and more specific. They have a very precise profile of the candidate they want to have, and therefore you have to create a very simple statement about yourself, which is clearly identified for headhunters so they can see who you are and what you stand for. If you take my own case as an example in the introduction, I introduced myself as a global businessman with extensive CEO and chairman experience. And that to headhunters is very clear, and then they can sort of dig into it. But when they search, either by Google or otherwise, that's how people will find me. You have no voice?
Sorry, I forget to unmute all the time.
Yeah.
Jumping industries, yes, that is a tough thing to do because you already have to jump functions, and jumping industries might not give you so much of a credibility as maybe gaining experiences in one industry or something related to it. Now, sir, our community would wait to hear your message for them. So what would be your message for our experts, professionals, budding CEOs from the management fraternity of MBA Club India?
The question I get all the time is there a silver bullet? Just tell me in a few points, what do I need to become a CEO? And clearly, the matter is much, much more complex than that. And that's why I've written a book rather than just written one page. And if I may just say a few words about my book, the first thing I will say is that all royalty for the book will go towards an MBA scholarship at the Copenhagen Business School. So I'm not promoting my book to make money for myself. It's for an MBA in their international program. But since I've been getting the question so many times about the simple version of what you need to do, I have, for my next book, which is going to be a generic version with the working title of The CEO Guide, I have started to draft something in about 10 points. And I'm calling it 10 steps towards a successful CEO career. And step number one is understanding the job of the CEO. This is really important. Step number two is assess whether you have the potential to become a great leader. Number three is assess whether you're willing to do what it takes to become a CEO. And number four is plan your career and develop your brand. And number five is about the pre-CEO jobs that you need to have. As I said, you have to be involved in finance, in operations, in marketing and sales. And point number six is that you have to deliver results and show achievements in all the time and demonstrate that you have leadership potential. Number seven is get your CEO job as early as you can, no matter where it is and no matter how small the job is. Number eight is perform, demonstrate achievements, build teams, and ideally you should always have a potential successor in your team, because if you don't have a successor, you're unlikely to move to it's more difficult for you to move to the next job. Point number nine is when you get to your last CEO job, you should continue to be yourself. Some people think that when they get the real big job, they have to change. They have to become Jack Welch or Steve Jobs or somebody else. No, you've got the job because you are who you are, and don't change. And continue to deliver results, make achievements, build great teams, and again, think about having a successor in your team. And then lastly, if this is your last job, the big job, think about the exit of the job. And my last point is, when you have finished your last CEO job, again, plan what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Will you go into retirement or will you have a second career? That's something that needs to be planned. You cannot go from a very, very busy life to doing nothing. So you have to plan. So these are the 10 sort of steps that you have to take. And these are headlines only. They are not a formula, but they give you a structure to work with.
Those are some very powerful and insightful silver bullets that our students will learn from. Sir, I have come across an assessment test that you give out in your existing book online. Would you like to tell us something about it?
Yes, I have a website which is has the name of my editor. It's something that will be included, I think, in the text. It's called www.editorawaldemar.com. And on that site, you could go in and do 2 tests, and they're free of charge. My suggestion is that you print out the chapter with the tests, and that you perform the tests together with a mentor and make the judgment clearly together with a mentor. The first part is about whether you're really willing to do what it takes. And the second part is whether you have the qualities of a great leader. With those 2 in mind, then you can decide whether you want to embark on a CEO career or not. And I think this is very important that you do these tests to not, let's say, spend time on something which is not for you.
That's great, sir. It was a lot of learning from you, and I can't wait to take the assessment tests myself. We are very grateful for your time, and a very warm thanks and uh, gratitude from the entire team of MBAClubIndia.com. We wait to see you sometimes if you ever travel to India.
I wish everybody who listens in all the best and good luck. And as you know, luck comes with hard work. The harder you work, the luckier you become. So get on with the good work and you will be successful.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Bye-bye.